What's up, guys? We're back for Ask Todd V, but we have a special guest. We have James all the way over from Europe, where he does a lot of coaching for me. He also coaches online through calls and coaches on the mentorship program as well. So I thought today, instead of Ask Todd, we're going to do a little Ask James. Got some questions from Instagram. By the way, submit your questions to us, YouTube, Instagram, email. Get the questions if you want them answered, and you might see your question on here next. He hasn't heard these questions before. This is a completely raw take. So let's see what we got.
Let's do it.
First question for you. How to go out solo in the daytime. Tips.
I think scheduling the time is a very, very good way to go about it. Another thing that I would definitely suggest is try to have an idea of what you're trying to achieve when you go out each session, especially if you're somebody who's more of a beginner. So if you know that you struggle with approach anxiety, then for example, having like some approach anxiety levels that you're trying to aim towards each time you go out, I think that's definitely going to be helpful for you. And yeah, besides that, before and after, just be aware of what you want to work on and be aware of what your sticking points are and focus on that.
So what about like mentalities, attitudes, keeping in a good frame of mind as the session progresses? Because we talked about preparing the session, which I think is very important, but what about during the session?
Yeah, so during the session, I don't suggest that you try to get too analytical in your head with like exactly what's going on and what you did well and what you did wrong. The best time to do that is after the session. When you're out, don't expect that everything has to be perfect. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just literally focus on taking action. Be like, my goal was to come out and do this. I'm gonna do it the best I can. If it's not amazing, that's completely fine. If it happens that you go really well and maybe you're planning to just do like beginner approaches and just ask, quick questions or give a quick compliment, but you end up getting into like a long interaction and get the girl's phone number, that's amazing. I wouldn't suggest trying to leave an interaction like that just because you're specifically working on like the beginner basics. But yeah, when you're out, just focus on taking the action. Focus on whatever it is that you plan to do. Focus on doing that and try not to get too analytical while you're out.
Where do you suggest going for Daygame solo?
There's a few things with this. It's very common that people will just go to like the city center or kind of like look for the most busiest area. Something that's very important to be aware of is that the city center or the busiest part of your city, it's not always going to have the most attractive girls. So something that I like to be very aware of is where are the areas in the city that are more like exclusive or a little bit more high end or a little bit more like expensive. Maybe for example, if you're going to a shopping mall, there's generally multiple different shopping malls in each city, and it really depends on like what brands are at each specific shopping mall or like, what part of the city it's in. A lot of that will determine the quality of girls that are generally at these areas. So you don't particularly always just want to go to the most busiest place, but sometimes going to the place that's got like the most attractive girls would be a lot better.
Cool. And then what about the types of venues? Like, do you like malls or parks or streets, or what are your preferences?
My personal preference is I like all of them. I don't have a problem with all of them.
Good answer.
I like parks. Parks are really good because a lot of the time girls don't really have to do anything in particular, so they're kind of just chilling and it's very easy to get into long interactions. Mm-hmm. I like shopping malls because it just so happens that there's generally a lot of attractive girls at shopping malls. Mm-hmm. Also just like busy streets, like shopping streets and stuff like that. I like those a lot as well. Yeah, basically anywhere where there's attractive girls. What you should definitely think though about your venues is, what do you find to be the least intimidating, or what do you find to be something that's gonna help you achieve whatever your goal is as opposed to hurt you? So if you wanna have like longer interactions and you're trying to get into like instant dates and pools and stuff like that, well, maybe you should think about going to parks and places like that where girls are more likely to be chilling. If you want to practice like girls who are walking in groups and stuff like that, well then it's more likely that you're going to find that sort of stuff at like shopping malls or like busy parts of the city and stuff like that. So in terms of what you should do, in terms of how to pick, you should definitely be aware of what you're trying to achieve, what your goal is, and what your preference is for when it comes to doing Daygame and meeting girls, and try to focus on that as well.
What about girls by themselves, girls in groups? If you're gaming alone, do you do both? Do you do all of them? Do you tend to try and focus or prioritize one?
Yeah, so in terms of my personal strategy, my personal strategy is go out, and when there's a girl that I'm specifically attracted to, I talk to her. Regardless of whether it's a group or it's a girl alone or whether she's sitting or standing or at the mall or at the park or the beach or whatever. It's my personal preference is I go out, I like that girl, I'm going to talk to her. And then after doing this for long enough, you kind of figure out the best way to go about each situation, and so I can generally do it well enough. For somebody who's not me and maybe more of a beginner or in an intermediate realm or something like that, there's two different things you can do. The first is basically what I do, just go out, look for the girls that you like and talk to them. The second is you can think about what you need to improve or what you're trying to work on and try to push yourself to do a little bit of that. That's going to help you as well. The third out of the two things you can do is you can also play to your strengths.
Okay.
You can definitely play to your strengths. So if you like girls who are like walking along on their own very slowly, that are going to be easy to approach, then go for that. It really depends. Are you trying to push yourself and trying to grow, or are you gaming for results, or are you just gaming for the girls that you like?
Gotcha. And which do you recommend? Do you recommend gaming for results, gaming to improve, a little mix of both?
Yeah, I recommend a mix of both. Okay. I definitely recommend a mix of both. So, I mean, what happens very commonly is that guys, the first kind of method that they learn that's the most easiest for them is approaching girls on their own. Problem with that is if you really want to start like upping the quality of girls that you're meeting and dating, it's less likely that the girls that are very attractive are going to be on their own. So there is definitely some degree of like value in learning how to approach groups, learning how to approach like, you know, the mixed interactions and stuff like that. So if you just went out and only spoke to girls on their own, well then, you know, you're not really going to get much better with that, and it might be difficult to get more attractive girls down the line. So I suggest doing a bit of both. Doing what you like, doing what you can do well, but every now and then definitely push yourself and try to grow as well.
What do you think is a good opener for beginners, and maybe is it the same for advanced guys, or should it change at an advanced level? How should you start the conversation?
Yeah, so for somebody who's beginner, what I personally suggest is what I call soft direct. And what that means is you're generally going like some sort of complimentary opener, some sort of direct opener, but it's definitely not this whole like, hey, I just saw you and I thought you were absolutely adorable, so I had to come over here and talk to you, otherwise I'd be completely upset with myself. I definitely don't recommend that. Something along the lines of like, hey, I like your style. Hey, I thought you've got a really cute look. I wanted to come say hi quickly. Hey, I think you've got a really badass look about you, so I was kind of curious. Those sorts of opens where you are establishing that the reason that you're there is because the girl caught your attention and you want to talk to her, but you're not completely just like giving all of your power away straight from the open. That's what I really suggest, like kind of beginners and guys who are just kind of getting over approach anxiety still. And you can have like a couple of these canned openers just in your back pocket ready to use for any situation, and I definitely recommend that. For guys who are a little bit more advanced, I recommend trying to be a little bit more like indirect, a little bit more kind of like situational, observational, making a comment about the girl's style, or making a comment about like just a facial expression or the way that she's walking along, the way that she's carrying herself. Something that's not overtly saying, hey, I like you, hey, I'm interested, but it's still going to be enough for you to convey your personality and get into the conversation.
Gotcha. That's good. Any final tips you'd give? What about anything like how to dress, how to get yourself hyped up before a session, how long a session you should go on? Any just little tips, little tricks that you employ?
For sure. Many. Yeah, so in terms of how long a session should be, I don't recommend going for too long. I suggest trying to have more of a goal of number of approaches that you're trying to do, as opposed to a specific period of time. I'm definitely a fan of trying to go out between like 3 to 4 times per week, aiming for around 5-ish approaches per session. I think that's a very sustainable way to go about like incorporating this into your life. I think if you're going out every single day, it can actually, you know, put a bit of pressure on other parts of your life, and so as fun as it can be, but you know, unfortunately we have other things we have to do. But yeah, so I think going out a couple times per week and just planning how many approaches that you want to do and trying to push yourself to stick to that as much as possible is generally a lot more beneficial than being like, I'm going to go out for 2 hours, you know. So I think that's very helpful. In terms of just the overall process and the overall strategy of going out, the more you can enjoy it, the easier it's going to be overall. So you might not feel like going out when it comes to like the time that you want to go out and do day game. There might be times where you don't particularly feel like going out and being social or pushing yourself past like your level of whatever, social anxiety or whatever like that. But try to find the positives in it and try to find the fun in it as well, especially when you have a really good interaction. Celebrate your wins. And you know, if anything kind of funny happens, try to like find the humorous side in it, try to laugh about it a little bit. And yeah,
it's all an experience.
Exactly. Try not to take it too seriously, just enjoy the process.
All right, thanks James, I appreciate it. Really, really good answers, and I can vouch this is a guy who does day game a lot and does it very, very well, so you want to really listen up to what he says. So thank you again, and I will see you guys on the next video.
Thanks guys, see you later.